Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So today is actually a very exciting video for me to make because I really needed some time to digest the disastrous Q2 earnings that got so many people pissed with Palantir, and we had big YouTubers like Sasha selling all his shares, and we had Tom Nash being really pissed with the company, although I saw on Twitter that he bought $50,000 more of Palantir this Friday, so he must be seeing the same thing that I'm seeing. So I really needed some time to think because I started feeling, wobbly about, I also started looking, should I sell Palantir or should I not? And I was really doing research and making videos as I go. And today I feel like is a culmination, and I came to a resolution also in myself, and I really want to share this with you. So as always, if you like this video, please make sure you hit the subscribe button that is down below here. And if you want to go further and support the channel and get direct access to me, then check out the first link in the description box below, where you can join our Patreon from $5 a month and support the channel. So Q2 really has changed Palantir Thesis, and what is it that so many people were unhappy with? So a lot of people were rightfully upset that they just took away the 30% per year growth target from their investor presentation when they reported earnings. And the reason why this upset a lot of people is because, one, they sort of did it quietly. They didn't make a point out of it. And number two is that so much of the valuation of Palantir is built around the fact that they're going to grow more than 30% per year. However, Daddy Carp reiterated that his plan is to grow 30% per year. And this got a lot of people confused because they were like, okay, which one and why do you take away the number and then say on the call that you're going to do it? And this got a lot of people upset. Then their government business barely grew. So people legitimately asked the question, is this a busted growth story? And what the heck? Palantir is supposed to be a growth company, and the government section grew a merely 16%, and that doesn't look like a growth company. And then there is a lot of news that Palantir has a competitor in Snowflake, and Snowflake is killing it. And, they reported really, really good earnings, and Palantir, I heard a lot of YouTubers say, needs to fire all the salespeople. And I already debunked this. In this video, I'm actually going to do a true apples to apples comparison with Snowflake and give you a little bit my explanation. So it's going to be a really, really cool video, a must see if you're a Palantir investor. So buckle up and let's begin. Oh yeah, and subscribe if you haven't. So what did they actually report? So in the report, they gave this a figure that in Q3 they're going to grow, and this is basically almost flat with Q2. And they gave this that in the financial year, they're only going to, like in the full year, they're only going to go to 1.9 billion, and people were expecting them to do over 2 billion. And this was also upsetting people that they didn't write here what the percentage is. It's only a 24% growth. So here's the thing. What many people don't understand is Palantir is like two companies. So you have a government section and then you have a commercial section. And it's very important to see, divide these two and then see if there is a logical explanation of why things are slowing down. So this is where you see the overall company growth. Q2 compared to last year's Q2, 26%. So you can see that this is below the 30% that everybody was expecting. And this is the beginning of the freak out. However, they break it down here that it's the government revenue growth that was 13%, which is very bad. However, the commercial revenue growth was 46%, which is really, really good. And I feel that in the conference call, they gave a very logical explanation that, the government contracts, they can be very lumpy. And if you look, 10 years back, you do have an over 30% CAGR. But they even had years in this 10 years when the government revenue was flat, and then they got a lot of contracts awarded. So this, I can live with this and give them the benefit of the doubt. So another really interesting thing is if you look at the absolute amount. So the total government revenue is 286 million. The commercial revenue went from 144 million to 210 million. And if we extrapolate this into the future, and even if the government, it never goes back to the 30% per year, which I think it will, but let's say it never goes back, in a few years, the commercial section will be so great that it will move the growth of the company. So the government will not matter as much as it does today. I hope this makes sense. So then another thing which gets overlooked is they are growing customers by 80% year over year. This is both government and both commercial. And this has very big implications, especially if you're worried about them slowing down business. And I'm going to show this in a bit why. And then here's another very interesting number. And this has to do with the competition. So the US commercial revenue growth grew by 120% year over year. That is a crazy good growth. And the reason why this is very, very important is because Snowflake, this is Snowflake's earnings. And, they reported 83% year over year product revenue growth. And you have to think of Snowflake, they are not a direct competitor to Palantir because they were like a data warehouse solution and they started offering analytics, just like Palantir. And Palantir is an analytics first solution. And I spoke to a lot of people and, Palantir product is way superior, but they do intersect with, Snowflake. So, and Snowflake doesn't sell to government and most of their customers are US customers, right? So if you look a true apples to apples comparison, Palantir actually grew 120% in revenue in the US, 46% if you include international, whereas Snowflake grew 83%. And again, they also have international sales, but I believe 86% of their sales is US, whereas Palantir, it's almost 50-50 US and international. Then they have a net revenue retention of 171%, which again looks like they're eating Palantir's lunch until you realize that they have a lot of small customers. Whereas Palantir, I believe the average customer has an 8 million per year buying from Palantir, and it's very hard to grow that rate. And still Palantir has a 119% net revenue retention, which is crazy good. So to get a true apples to apples, Snowflake would have to disclose what is the net revenue retention of the 1+ million customers. I wouldn't even be surprised if they completely lose money on the customers that is below 1 million a year. I mean, Snowflake, because, they have so many salespeople connected with this and so forth and so forth. So I wouldn't be surprised, but they don't disclose this. They have 246 1 million plus customers, whereas Palantir has 203 customers, very comparable. This is US and international combined. They only have 119 US customers. And I want to remind here that Foundry is a 5-year product, whereas Snowflake has been around for 10 years. So this is, again, something that is very, very interesting with Palantir, is that the Palantir business is almost 20 years old, but they were mostly on the government side. It's been 5 years when they decided to go into the commercial side. And in the 5 years, they have gotten 203 commercial customers, again, US and international, whereas Snowflake in the 10 years has gotten 246 1 million plus customers. So this is when it becomes very, very comparable. And then the gross margin is 75% for Snowflake, non-GAAP, meaning, you take out the stock-based compensation, and Palantir has 81% non-GAAP. So you can see that Palantir is actually not doing that bad when you do a true apples to apples comparison. But obviously, when you only present the US customers, and if Palantir would only present the US customers, you would say like, okay, there is a competition, but both is in a very, very fast growing business segment. And it doesn't look like you can't have both companies that are thriving in this business. Just like, you have Apple and Microsoft and Google. They all thrive. And they are slightly similar and competing with each other. Then again, back to the same point. This is Snowflake. So Snowflake had a 36% year over year on their total customers and 112% growth of the 1 million plus revenue customers. Let's look at how Palantir did with customers. So this is all the customers. Within 1 year, they went from 169 to 304. So that's an 80+% revenue growth, whereas Snowflake did 112%. But keep in mind that this is all of Palantir's customers. If you look at, for example, the US, which is more comparable to Snowflake, there they went from 34 to 119. So that is like a 380% increase in customers. So that is crazy. So total customers, 36%, total commercial customers in Palantir, 80%. And the 1+ million customers, I mean, depends on if you look at US or international, everything included 80%, only US included 380%. So very, very comparable numbers. So now, why do I think that Palantir is not really running into problems? I mean, one of them is this fact that the government business can be lumpy, and I do give them a benefit of the doubt here. However, I want to show you this chart that so many people forget when they talk about, Palantir sales. So Palantir is ramping up its sales force. But look, every time the salespeople close companies, this you can see, let's say in 2019, they closed $19 million of new business deals. So when you have a, 2 billion revenue growth, it's a piss in Mississippi. It's a drop in a bucket, right? It's a 1% increase. But look at what happens to that cohort the year after. They are buying 69. That's more than a 300% increase. And look at what happens the year after. They're buying for 102 million. So that means that the people that you closed in year 1, in year 3, they're buying 5x the amount that you closed. And you can see the same thing in 2020. They closed customers for 6 million, 300x the year after. And you can see that in 2021, they closed customers for 53 million. So this amount should be 150 million if this trend continues in 2022. And, we have to wait until they report. But if you care about the growth of Palantir, the biggest increase that you want to see is the increase of customers, because the customers are going to go through this, expansion phase with Palantir. So therefore, I'm not so worried about government revenue. I'm worried about the number of customers because, you want them to go through this. So what was my thesis when I invested in Palantir? So Palantir, my thesis was that they're going to grow 30% per year. They have no competition. The balance sheet is a fortress balance sheet with zero debt, 2.2 billion in cash. Let me just make my head smaller. They have zero risk of bankruptcy and they don't need to raise any money. So when we went into this bear market, I was like, there's zero bankruptcy risk. There is, this company for sure is going to be around. Your only question is how good is their earnings going to be in 2025? Then my thesis was that their product is very, very sticky and they are in a very fast growing market because obviously the big businesses, they need to digitalize and, become smarter because their competition is becoming smarter. And if they want to create an artificial intelligence data analytics solution, it costs them about, over $1 billion to make, and they might not succeed. And it might take them 3 or 4 years. So instead, they can hire Palantir, pay them $20 million, and have something that gives them value within a week, So this was part of my thesis, that this product is very, very needed. And once you start using it, it's very, very sticky and very hard to get rid of. And then part of the thesis was that bad times are good for Palantir. So if we have inflation, if we have wars, if we have, Fed tightening and companies need to become more efficient, this all gives tailwinds to Palantir because they are data analytics software and you need the data, to become more efficient. And also that this company is totally inflation proof because, they're not oil dependent. They're not raw materials dependent. They have an 81% adjusted gross margin. And they service very, very big customers, governments and the global 6,000 companies. And these companies have money to pay for these services, even if they increase the price a little bit. So this was my thesis, right? So what changed after Q2? Because again, there was so much negativity around the company. And the only way that I would sell is if my thesis breaks. Like I'm fine with, my company having a little bit of a tough time. As long as they go through it on the other side. And you have to remember, if Palantir would be doing great, and, it was obvious that they were going to grow, 35% plus years. And you can see that in 10 years, they're going to arrive at, 15 plus billion in revenue and, many, many billions of profit. think about where the stock price would be. It wouldn't be 8 as it is at, I mean, we are below 8 at the time of recording this video. The stock price would be 30. So unfortunately, you know, to get extraordinary gains, you need to go through extraordinary pain. And again, it's very important to see when you're going through this pain, is the thesis broken? So part one of the thesis was Palantir is going to grow 30% per year. So this might come down to 25%, although as I showed it to you before, there's a very good explanation for why the government was not growing. And the commercial, if the commercial keeps growing at 46-50% per year, they're going to take, like, the government will become such an insignificant part that Palantir is going to return to 30% plus growth. They have zero problems on the, you know, on the commercial side. So this is not really an issue as for the thesis, but it does change the target price a little bit. Then I had this in the thesis that they have no competition. There does seem to be a competition, but it doesn't seem to affect the growth rate. On the government, I don't really see that they have a viable competition. Snowflake and, you know, Databricks is a competition to Palantir, but the growth rates are still insane. And I believe that Palantir has a superior product. And at best, it's going to become like a duopoly that, you know, there's a few big companies that rule this data analytics space. A bit like, you know, Microsoft and Apple and Google. They have similar products and, you know, they serve a lot of people and they still survive and make great money. So I don't think that this is an issue. The balance sheet is still a fortress balance sheet. There's still 0% risk of bankruptcy. They still don't need to raise money. The product is still very, very sticky and needed in the market, as evidenced by the growth rates that I was showing you. The bad times are still good for Palantir, and the company is still very inflation proof. So you could say that there is not a big change to the thesis. I definitely wouldn't call this broken. I did need to revisit this. And my investment horizon was up to 2025. And if the company is still doing good, then up to 2030. And obviously, if still doing good, then longer. So how does this affect if Palantir is still a good investment? Because, you know, the growth rate is a very important thing when you talk about growth companies, and going down to a 25% growth rate, that is a big change. So let's look at the valuation, and this is the valuation that you can get if you join our Patreon. So I had the projected growth at 30%. I didn't want to bore you guys. So I decreased this to 25%. I'm still keeping the operating margin at 25%. And if all is true, in 2025, the revenue is going to be 3.7 billion. Karp on the earnings call said that he's going for 4.5 billion. Obviously, that would be a big change to the upside. So that would make almost $1 billion in operating income. I'm calculating with share dilution, and I'm calculating with a much normalized share dilution. And if you count with a PEG ratio of 2, which is fair for a company that is growing, and a PE rate of 50, and this is also quite conservative because, you know, Snowflake has an almost infinite PE, and companies that is this software utility subscription, you know, they can have an 80 to 100 PE easily. So I would almost say that this is like too conservative, but I like it this way, you know. So if this is the share count, this is the net income that they make, and, you know, you times it with 50 and you divide it by the share count, you get a share price of $20. So this is, I would say, a bear case, because I do believe that Palantir is going to go back over the 30% year over year growth. So how does $20 in 2025 look? I like to go for a 30% return in my investments. I don't expect that it would be 30%, but, you know, that's what I'm targeting. And because if my target would be, you know, 10%, I could just be buying the S&P 500. And we are halfway through 2022, so I had to update how I discount this into the present. But if I discount this very bearish price target, I get that if the stock is below $7.98, which it was below last time it traded below this price, then you will get a compounded annual return of over 30%. So obviously, if Palantir would be at $20 today, it would not be a good deal. But because of how low the stock price has gotten, this still means that if I get money over, I am going to be buying more of Palantir as long as the price is here. And hey, look, we're all different as investors, and maybe you're happy with the 20% yearly return. In that case, even $10.57 is a very good buying price for Palantir, as the target price in 3.5 years is $20. And I think that this is a very realistic, very conservative price target. So the conclusion of this video, Q2 was not as disastrous as people make it out to be. I'm still as bullish as ever on Palantir. And if I get money over, I mean, full disclosure, I'm going to buy a bit more Tesla to have the same amount of Tesla as Palantir. But the moment I figure out a way to get more money out on the stock market, I'm going to be adding to Palantir as long as the price is this or lower. So let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments if this video helped you out. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the Patreon link below, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.